The sea has been a major part of the Indian culture and history. Archaeological evidence in the form of a seal, in the representation of a boat, and the tidal dock at Lothal dates back our maritime tradition to circa 3500 to 1700 BC, and seafaring activities between the Indus cities and Mesopotamia go back to the 3rd millennium BC. The Vedas also talks about India's maritime activities, and there are references in Kaudilya's Arthashastra on India's ancient maritime activities. The Naval History Cell was created in 1968 at Naval Headquarters to collect records and documents about wars and operations undertaken by the Indian Navy. In 1976, the question of writing the history of the Indian Navy before and after independence was raised by the Naval Headquarters. Thereafter, services of suitable retired senior officers were requisitioned. The Naval History Cell (NHC) was redesignated as the Naval History Division (NHD) on the 20th of August 2006. The scope of its responsibilities was enlarged to cater for the compilation of historical data and function as the research institution of the Indian Navy to carry out research in maritime matters and publish naval history books of the Navy. Currently, the Naval History Division has published 7 volumes of naval history recording the history of the Indian Navy from 1945 to 2021. This volume looks into the prehistory of India's maritime legacy, including its tradition of shipbuilding. Spanning a timeline over 6 years under 2 ensigns, covers crucial events that contributed to laying the foundation of the Indian Navy, such as the end of the World War II and the division of the Royal Indian Navy into the Royal Indian Navy and the Royal Pakistan Navy. It covered landmark events such as the Indian Navy becoming the first Indian armed force to be awarded the President's Colour on the 27th of May 1951. It documented the commissioning of the first naval air station, INS Garuda, in 1953, acquiring the Indian Navy's cruiser, INS Mysore, in 1957, and the commissioning of the first aircraft carrier, INS Vikrant, in 1961. It also talks about the significant role of the Indian Navy in the liberation of Goa in 1961. This history volume covers the transition of leadership from British to Indian when the first Indian Chief of Naval Staff, Vice Admiral R.D. Katari, assumed command of the service on the 22nd of April 1958. This volume documents the commissioning of the first submarine, INS Calvary, in December 1967, and by 1975, the submarine arm had grown to 8 submarines.
Pakistan launched a full-scale war against us. The Pakistan Air Force suddenly struck at our airfield.
This volume mainly looks at the Indian Navy's role in the 1971 Indo-Pak War. It documents the Indian Navy's audacious missile boat attacks on Karachi, the sinking of PNS Ghazi.
The first target that we had on the 4th of December was to air attack on Cox's Bazar. Soon after that, the main target actually was Chittagong Harbour.
The naval air arms sustained attacks on Chittagong and Cox's Bazar, and the extensive contraband control in the Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea, which enabled the respective fleets to dominate the seaward approaches to the western and eastern wings of Pakistan. This volume covers a decade that witnessed a most extraordinary transition in the Indian Navy's journey and the new acquisitions from the USSR, such as the R-class missile destroyers, conventional submarines, and long-range marine reconnaissance LRMR aircraft to coastal minesweepers. It also covers the acquisitions from Britain, such as the aircraft carrier INS Virat and the vertical short takeoff and landing V-STOL aircraft Sea Harrier. Transition to eminence closes by assessing the exposure and experience gained between 1987 and 1990 during Operation Pawan in Sri Lanka and Operation Cactus as an aid to the Maldivian government. which provided valuable experience in seaward support of troops and knowledge regarding facing a low-intensity conflict in confined waters.
Our economy, polity and society have to be made extraordinarily resilient and alert if we are to take full advantage of the opportunities and to minimize the risks associated with the increasing globalization.
This volume documents the trials and tribulations that the Indian Navy went through during a period that was globally challenging due to the sweeping global changes on the geopolitical and economic fronts. The Indian Navy's assistance in the UN peacekeeping mission in Somalia from 1992 to 1994 and the maturing of the Indian Navy's blue water capabilities have been extensively documented in this volume. It covers naval operations during the Kargil conflict of 1999. The book also talks about the development of the naval air arm and commissioning of indigenously built Delhi-class destroyers. This volume records the entire spectrum of activities, including shipbuilding, operations, maritime diplomacy, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, organizational challenges and infrastructure changes, including the commissioning of the Indian Naval Academy. It also uncovers the commissioning of an indigenously built stealth frigate, the Shivalik class. Blue Waters Ahoy re-emphasizes the Indian Navy's impetus towards becoming a builder's navy from a buyer's navy and throws light on the ultimate achievement of designing and building its aircraft carrier INS Vikrant. The volume covers the operations, structural reorganizations, the building of infrastructure, growth of fleet units, human resources, automation of procedures, material management, dockyards, headquarters, ancillary units, etc. It has documented the Indian Navy's diplomatic role that had led to increasing HADR missions, anti-piracy missions and deployment of naval assets to the far seas in pursuance of foreign policy. The book documents the commissioning of the Indian Navy's third aircraft carrier INS Vikramaditya into the service on the 16th of November 2013. The inauguration of the new Naval War College and the commissioning of INS Jatayu are important milestones in the current decade, and the journey of naval history continues, and so are the stories. The Naval History Division, with its impeccable standards of documenting and publishing such volumes of history, plays a pivotal role in the understanding of the Indian Navy's growth. This documentation will fuel the further growth of the Indian Navy, as these are the lessons that the future generations will grow up with and learn to utilize to the fullest at any moment of crisis in the future. Shamno Varuna, Jai Hind.